3 weeks from today, voters across this country will go to the polls and cast their ballots. And right now, the marquee matchup seems to be the fight for control of the U.S. Senate, with a map that may be making room for a little more red. Let's get a progress report. Andrew, 3 weeks out, where are we looking?
Well, this was always billed as being a year for Republicans, Rich, and more and more it looks like it might be one as more headlines pop up like this one from the New York Times. Republican majority Senate is starting to look likelier. The projection sites are echoing that trend. The Times projecting right now about a 7 in 10 chance that the GOP will take back the Senate, while 538, that's Nate Silver's page, puts the odds around 6 in 10. And there are only a small handful of about 6 or 7 races, Rich, that could determine the actual control of the Senate come November 3rd.
And it's interesting the states the Democrats would be counting on to hold, right?
Well, there's a chance right
like
now
not
that
usual states that could
South Dakota, Kansas, and Georgia, the Senate races there, could tip it back to the Democrats if circumstances work out the way that they might.
Well, and the Democrats, though, are also worried because they just stopped the funding in Kentucky, where there used to be a real even match there with McConnell, I think, and
Grimes, Allison Grimes. Yeah.
And they said, we're not funding it anymore. We just, it's close, but it's not close enough for us to invest in it. So the handwriting is on the wall here in terms of the national.
And there was a seat in Montana where Democrats, the sitting senator became the ambassador to China so that they could appoint, I think his name is Joe Walsh. Might be wrong.
Yeah, no, it is,
And he was caught in a plagiarism scandal, and he's now dead in the water.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
These are states that Democrats were counting on.
Now, they argue even if they lose it, it really won't change that much. And that 2 years from now, there may be another wave. But if you think the president's in, you got gridlock now, just imagine what it's going to be like in a few months.
Absolutely.
Is this all about the president, you think? Or is this about something else?
I think a lot of it is the president. But I think there's also a malaise out there.
Yeah.
There's we're just kind of fed up with politics. People are just kind of tired of hearing it. They're tired of the negative commercials. I think that's true across the country.
How about you, from somebody who served and was reelected as many times as you were, do you remember there being such real antipathy to politics? We joke around, but the regular person, the amount that they assume politicians are crooked, politicians couldn't care about anything but elections, it's palpable out there.
It is, and I'm not on the street, obviously, the way I used to be, but my sense, talking to people, is it's at a real low point, and there are a lot of reasons for it. But part of it is the president. Part of the problem is, of course, New York State politics, the Moreland Commission, the issues surrounding all of those folks who have been indicted or in trouble.
But Congress, 7%.
I think it's actually worse than antipathy at this point. I think people are so turned off by it that they're not even paying attention.
Yeah.
If you took a camera out on the street and asked how many people if they knew when the next election was, you might get a lot of people who I think you would.
That's
get a lot
even
of people
worse.
Who didn't even
I think
know.
you're right. Just throwing in the towel is even worse than being mad about it. All right, now some unusual candor from a very guarded governor.
It seemed like one day I woke up and all of a sudden everything was terrible. It was living my nightmare.
The governor speaking about his personal life as he makes the media rounds for his new book coming out today. In it, Cuomo says he didn't realize his marriage to Kerry Kennedy was over until he got a call from his best friend, the media.
I was sure that I could fix it. I was always, up until that point, I had always been successful in fixing things, and I was going to fix this. And my wife at the time kept saying, I want a divorce, but I just couldn't hear it. And it became real when a reporter said, I'm reporting on it, it's going to be in the newspaper.
Now, in the book, Cuomo opens up about his failed run for governor in 2002, saying he should have listened to local leaders before taking on H. Carl McCall in the primary. And he says of the speech where he ended that campaign, quote, I wanted to get back in my car, go home, and be alone. I disappointed my wife, my parents, my supporters, myself. I hated feeling like a public spectacle. As I stood on stage, I felt my last bit of dignity drain out. And finally, to his critics who complain about his heavy-handed style of leadership.
Well, you micromanage.
Yes,
you
they say that too.
Delegate more.
Right, and you're, they're not very you're not transparent. They say.
I know. I know.
And they say you don't suffer fools, and
Yeah.
And you're not.
You push too hard.
Yeah.
You micromanage.
Yes.
And yeah.
All of that. You plead guilty or not guilty?
You can't have one without the other. I plead guilty.
You shared a state with this man here. he seems self-aware, if nothing else. Has it been better for New York in that I know a lot of Republicans say stuff at least is getting done. Overall, how did you find his style of leadership, especially compared to some previous predecessors of his?
Controlling is what he is. And we most interacted directly on the Tappan Zee Bridge issue, of course, but he directs and controls what he wants to do. And on the areas where you agree with him, you're glad he did. And areas that you're not sure, you're not so happy he did. And I think, the Astorino campaign is trying to pick up on that and trying to make sure you cover the areas that we don't agree on. He's controlling. Everything is controlled. This book release is controlled to a day. I'll tell you, it's specific. He had everything set up. And the fact that he's going around to deal with the media is only a temporary hiatus in his running from the media. I mean, he's not like that.
And it's that controlling style. I have a question, though, Andrew, which is, I know he talks about only what he wants to talk about, and we said 4 years ago there's no way he's going to be able to cut off the media completely, but he has. However, why choose 3 weeks out to talk about a failed marriage, about feeling it professionally the hugest failure that he did, about a failure and turning off large portions of the black community and how we went after McCall, which even he said was ill thought? What's the upside to that? Because it doesn't fit into his narrative till now.
We've heard a lot of criticism of his style from panels like this one or from Rob Astorino in the campaign that's running against him. Him talking about his own failings or shortcomings humanizes him. And it's a human level interest that I think people will pick up on in a way that maybe they're not up on whether he's delayed fracking or where he's standing on casinos or the Tappan Zee Bridge or any of the issues that are facing the state. But you talk about a marriage to a Kennedy, a failed marriage, and the personal mistakes that he's made, that's the kind of stuff that the people who aren't paying as close attention as we do will pick up on and will be able to discuss. And in their minds, it'll make him more accessible.
I got to hit a break here, guys. Thank you both very much. When we come back, trust me, you're going to stick around for this conversation. I'm going to introduce you to a very interesting man who grew up, by the way, in this area, in the Hudson Valley, and whose creative mind led him on an amazing journalistic path. Now he is facing a new, unknown, and very frightening journey. We're going to talk about his battle with Alzheimer's straight ahead.